This is the captain of the Enterprise. Ship.
Podcasting, the final frontier. These are the ridiculous introductions I am forced to read at gunpoint, or should I say phaser point.
Ship.
Welcome to Ship, yet another in the long line of tedious Star Trek podcasts. This show is hosted by David Lawler and David B. Anderson. The two Davids will take you on a journey through time and space every 3 or 4 weeks, boldly podcasting where no podcast has gone before. Seriously? This is what you're making me read? Take it away, boys.
Good evening. This is David Anderson, and this is Ship to Ship, a Star Trek podcast. I'm here, as always, with Mr. David Lawler. How are you doing?
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
We had a few difficulties early trying to set this up, and we may drop out again.
Now it's working. Hopefully everything, we won't crap out. I'm actually going to blame V'ger.
Okay.
Because tonight is a special, I'd say a special episode. We're doing Star Trek the Motion Picture.
That was an incredible award-winning segue. It was fantastic.
Thank you.
Combined the two. It was wonderful. Yes, V'ger, the creator needs to join with V'ger.
Yes, I said by Arnold Schwarzenegger, the creator.
Yeah, this was just sort of an afterthought that was like, wait a minute, shouldn't we cover the movies? Okay, if we're going to cover the movies, instead of doing them all at the end, I guess, we'll intersperse them throughout episodes of our own, talking about the episodes of the original series. And also thematically, those episodes that we do will tie into the movies that we're talking about. Like, for example, we're talking about Star Trek the Motion Picture tonight. Next time you hear us, we'll be talking about an episode that this movie basically rips off called The Changeling. So we'll be able to compare and contrast the two.
Number one on our list of things to do.
All right. So this movie came out. When did it come out? Did it come out in December of 1979?
Christmas of 1979, and just barely. Actually, I think it came out on my birthday. December 9th was either the premiere or the release. That would be my birthday.
And you would have been how old?
I would have been 79. I would have been 8. I would have been freshly 8.
Really? You saw this in the theater?
1971.
Yeah, but you saw this movie in the theater, though?
Yes, I did. In fact, I went with my brother and I. Maybe one day I'll actually find the picture, but my brother and I, we actually dressed up in our Star Trek shirts to go see it. We actually have it's really funny. We have a picture probably taken a little bit before that, where we were in our Star Trek shirts. It was kind of like our brother portrait, almost like Ernie and Bert picture.
Oh, wow.
Fascinating.
And we're sitting there, and we're in our Star Trek, and we look very happy. We're in our Star Trek shirts, and then, of course, I'm like, I want to wear a Star Trek shirt to the Star Trek. Yeah. So I wear a Star Trek shirt. By this time, the shirt is way too small on me. I'm like I'm already grown, and I'm fat.
But this movie is not really a kid's movie. I mean, it might be rated G.
It's rated G, but man, it's a scary rated G. I gotta say.
Well, I mean, it's a little more. There's a lot of there's a lot of dead passages, and anyone expecting Star Wars would be really disappointed looking at the movie. It's so slow paced. I mean, I say that all that slow. I mean, it's just. And
I feel
also,
like
it's got all these heady, fundamental philosophical concepts,
which is what Star Trek. I mean, this is part of the reason. I mean, we'll get to the review.
I find it a little bit.
It's got a lot of that pretentious Star Trek about something kind of thing. They don't quite get you with like the.
They don't quite have a story.
I mean, they're trying to do extremely deep science fiction.
Yeah,
Star Trek was never really deep science. It was good science fiction, but it wasn't like
surface. It was surface intellectual philosophical arguments against action and space battles and Kirk's shirt coming off.
This is more. I've referred to it before as it's Star Trek meets 2001, and it doesn't really accomplish either.
That is what Roddenberry wanted. He didn't want Star Wars. He wanted 2001. And if it has a rhythm or a signature to it, it is much closer to 2001. Doug Trumbull did the visual effects. I mean, and he did pretty much the same kind of stuff he did for 2001 in this movie.
I'm going to say this, like, I did not hate this movie. I actually think there's a lot of really cool stuff in it, and I think that it's worth seeing. It's just that when you compare it to the other movies, it doesn't hold up. It doesn't have a clear artistic vision of what they were trying to do, and I pinpointed it down to a couple things that could have really fixed it. Because we were talking.
Yeah, I was just thinking a decent rewrite would fix it, but
decent. A polish, only to give it more of the fun, give it a little bit more of a pep and a fun, and not to denigrate the filmmakers, but a different director of photography, because the whole thing is shot in this sort of dark, drab.
Tonight, an ABC premiere presentation. William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy take off on the Starship Enterprise and encounter the unknown and the unexplainable.
Emergency alert.
Secure all stations.
Systems overloading Hunter.
Captain, we've been seized by a tractor beam.
Get ready for the unexpected. The ultimate human adventure. Star Trek, the motion picture.
I felt that and it may have had something to do with the attire that they were wearing, because they completely changed it. I think that it had
not completely. Remember, the engineering outfits remain the same.
You're right, because this was for all intents and purposes, all the later ones, at least 2 and 3, were relatively low budget deals. They were kind of using like the TV crews and everything. They kind of made those cheap.
Well, they did actually. A lot of the crew on this movie did work on the original show. I noticed John Dwyer, the property master, Irving Feinberg, Matt Jeffries, people like that. Jim Rugg, who did the special effects, the practical effects on the show. Some of them, a lot of them transferred over from the original show. I guess because Roddenberry wanted them, but yeah, much bigger crew, much more. Can I give you my theory of what this was all about?
Yeah, sure.
Star Wars. Star Wars comes out. Okay, now science fiction in the early 70s was dead. Nobody was. They made a couple of TV shows that didn't last very long.
I'm thinking like
Star Wars.
Space 1999. That's kind of what this reminded me of a little bit.
So Star Wars comes out, and it's made on a fairly big budget actually, and it becomes an enormous hit. August 1977. They're talking at Paramount, and and I think Walter Koenig.
Yes,
had the best. He had the best take, because you sent me a bunch of the supplemental materials that I have somewhere in my basement somewhere with the director's edition that came out. But he says that the Paramount people were like, "Do we have any science fiction properties that we own?" And somebody said, "I think we have Star Trek." And they're like, "What's
exactly?"
Spock's contaminating this boy, Jim.
Yeah. So they were like, "Okay, we're going to make our own Star Wars." But unfortunately, they recruited Roddenberry in, and Roddenberry basically took over the whole production. He was given a blank check. They gave him a blank check. First, they were going to make it as a TV show, Star Trek Phase 2. It was going to have a much bigger budget, twice the budget of the original show, which would have been roughly between $500,000 and $600,000 per episode.
Yeah, it was Paramount trying to create a fourth network at the time, before there was even a Fox network. They were going to try the Paramount, which they would eventually do with the UPN.
I guess Paramount didn't have that many franchises. They had Indiana Jones, they had Star Trek, and very little else. But so that's what they really wanted to do. It wasn't about bringing back the show. It was about cashing in on this new fad that was going around, big budget science fiction, and we talked about the other studios trying to make their bid for it too. Disney puts out The Black Hole, and the only one I can come from MGM would be James Bond movie Moonraker, basically Star Wars in space.
That's hardly, but that's almost like a whole. That's like, it's actually through United Artists, and
that wound up being a big hit.
That got some of the Star Wars stank on it.
Yeah, and then I guess Warner Brothers was already working on Superman, but they knew that. I think they already had an inkling of what Lucas was doing at Fox. So
also,
like, okay, we're gonna spend money. We're gonna make this big. We're gonna do really good visual effects.
Superman was more like the Saul kinds, and then Warner Brothers kept getting involved more and more as they kept like needing money. until eventually
Yeah,
Warner
yeah.
Brothers ended up owning pretty much the whole thing.
So that's what happened, and it's unfortunate because if you're a kid, because that's why I was wondering. I mean, as an 8-year-old, you're going to see this movie. If I were 8 years old watching it, or 7, I would have been around that point. I would be like, "What is this? This is boring." I would have fallen asleep. I have fallen asleep during motion picture a few times. If I have trouble sleeping, I'll put on Star Trek: The Motion Picture. But it's like I'm sitting there with my popcorn. This isn't a popcorn movie. You know, this is like one of these. Okay, I guess we're in it for the duration, and we have to listen to all this. You know, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. It's like it's got these. It's got these deep 2001 science fiction philosophical concepts going on in it, you know, and it's just not Star Trek. Star Trek is about dun 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 dun.
It needed to be a little bit more fun. You could have had all that pretentious science fiction, but it needed a more light flavor. And Shatner tries, and he has his Shatner moments where he winks at
Like actually,
Chekhov when they're taking off.
No problem. I had no problem with Shatner. I think it's a very good, strong performance from Shatner, and there's a lot of layers in the character. Obviously, they were right. There's some good stuff in here. I mean, there really is a lot of good stuff in here, but ultimately, it's just too long. I mean, you could have cut it down, and it would have been a better movie for it. But let's talk. Let's get into the story first.
Yeah.
There's this extremely dangerous ship out there that is destroying other ships or something. And we were introduced right after the credits, which I always found the credits seemed to me very rushed. Like somebody said, "Okay, we're done with the movie. Let's ship it up." Wait a minute! Oh shit, we forgot the credits.
They're just like blank over the credits and Jerry
Right.
Goldsmith. By the way, mention Jerry Goldsmith's score this is one of the great things about the movie is the Jerry Goldsmith score. It starts
That's
off with bum, bum, it starts off with this great theme. But then it's like very sort of, it's almost, it goes back to 2001. 2001 kind of has those sort of credits too. Although it's over the also struck whatever.
Yeah, they forgot. You know, I mean, like they did all this work making the movie and then forgot to put the credits on, so they just sort of rushed them and cobbled them together.
The fact that the music was literally done like we talked about, like having like the wet cut. I mean, like
everybody was in such a rush to make the movie.
Yeah,
probably because they wasted so much time on the TV show, and then Paramount's like, you know, if you want to keep making this movie, you better have it ready by Christmas.
I think it had to do with the special effects because they shot it like literally like a year before it came out. Like they were shooting in late 78 into 79. They had plenty. I mean, they would get this process down like way more efficient because a lot of the next movies, they'd be shooting them like in spring and they'd be out at Christmas.
Yeah. So two words, Harv Bennett. He's responsible for that. He's the reason those middle three were so successful. It was because of Harv Bennett. He came out of television when Paramount told Roddenberry, no, you can't produce the next one. We're just going to make you an executive consultant. We're bringing in Harv Bennett. Roddenberry hated Harv Bennett. He always viewed him as a competitor because Harv Bennett was working in television when he was too. So they were constantly.
Harv Bennett, if I'm not mistaken, like he would actually he helped out with like co-writing, and he would come in.
He wrote. He was a writer and a producer. He wrote the script. He came up with the story idea for Wrath of Khan, and then he wrote Search for Spock.
Yeah.
And then he co-wrote Star Trek 4, and he co-wrote. I believe he might have co-written Star Trek 5 or had a hand in that.
Yeah, he took the blame for Star Trek 5, even though. Darn it, Star Trek V was a success, was a hit because Paramount being mean to Shatner and giving him almost no budget.
Yeah,
it actually made a nice, tidy profit for him.
Yeah, and they blamed the writer's strike for that too. That was interesting. So this alien force is out there. It killed it blew up a bunch of Klingon ships. Mark Lenard plays the Klingon commander.
This is the beginning of them changing the Klingons too.
They have the ridges on their foreheads. It's a slightly different design than what we'll see later in Star Trek 3, I think, is when we see the Klingons that we're used to seeing.
Yeah.
Kirk basically uses this incident to put him back in the captain's chair, and the Enterprise has undergone a refit. It becomes the Enterprise as we know from the movies, which is a sleeker design. It's a very nice looking ship, actually. I remember having a model of it a long time ago.
Admiral, Mr. Scott, those departure orders, 12 hours, Starfleet cannot be serious.
Why aren't the Enterprise transporters operating, Mr. Scott?
Oh, we problems, sir, just temporary. Admiral, we have just finished 18 months redesigning and refitting the Enterprise. How in the name of hell do they expect me to have her ready in 12 hours?
Take me over, please.
She needs more work, sir. A shakedown.
Mr. Scott, an alien object of unbelievable destructive power is less than 3 days away from this planet. The only starship in interception range is the Enterprise. Ready or not, she launches in 12 hours.
Captain Will Decker, who is the son of one of Kirk's mentors, Matt Decker, in an episode that we'll talk about in the future.
I didn't know that. I just thought of him as, because he does mention of like how he was his mentor and he recommended him for the command, but I didn't know.
Well, Kirk was like a kind of father to Decker in a way after this guy died, Matt Decker. Mm-hmm. And got him through the academy and all that, and was guided him, and he became a captain. And he's about to undertake this first assignment as captain of the Enterprise. While then Kirk is admiral.
Kirk comes in, he says, "I'm assuming command." And this was the thing that I didn't quite understand. And I just realized it watching it for this show, is the only person that knows about sort of this incident is Kirk. The Epsilon 9 station getting taken over by the entity, which would later be known as V'ger.
Yeah, it's sort of top secret.
And it's a top secret. So only he knows. I guess Admiral Nagura knows.
Well, also the crew knows too.
No, the crew
tells
doesn't
the crew.
know.
They do. Remember, he comes in. Scotty knows.
No, here's how he tells people. He comes in. He knows. He tells Scotty, because it's like he tells him like, this is why we need to get done this quick. Then, before he can have the crew meeting where he tells everybody what's going on, he talks to Decker and tells him. All he says is I'm assuming command, and then he says, why are you taking command? And he says 5 years dealing with unknowns like this. He didn't tell him what the unknown was.
I'm replacing you as captain of the Enterprise. You'll stay on as executive officer. Temporary grade reduction to commander.
You personally are assuming command?
Yeah.
May I ask why?
My experience. 5 years out there dealing with unknowns like this. My familiarity with the Enterprise, its crew.
Admiral, this is an almost totally new Enterprise. You don't know her a tenth as well as I do.
That's why you're staying aboard. I'm sorry, Will.
No, Admiral. I don't think you're sorry. Not one damn bit. I remember when you recommended me for this command. You told me how envious you were and how much you hoped you'd find a way to get a Starship command again. Well, sir, it looks like you found a way.
Report to the bridge, Commander. Immediately.
Aye, sir.
It's like this weird editing thing where it's like
there's also, he winds up on the bridge. He goes up on the bridge, and it seems like his bridge crew knows, because Sulu says he's down in engineering. He doesn't know.
He doesn't know. So then he says he comes down to talk to him.
So Decker's the last person to know that he's being relieved.
No, but he just says 5 years of dealing with unknowns like this, but he hasn't told them what the unknown thing was yet.
Okay.
He didn't tell him why he was taking command.
We could probably assume maybe Decker has an inkling of what's going on. They assemble the crew. They show what's happened. The space station that's been monitoring this cloud is itself destroyed.
Yeah.
That's all we know about it. Except that it is now 53.4 hours away from Earth. Enterprise is the only Federation starship that stands in its way. Our orders are to intercept, investigate, and take whatever action is necessary and possible.
Bridge to Captain. Priority signal from Epsilon 9.
Put it on viewer.
On viewer, sir.
Enterprise. The cloud is definitely a power field of some kind. Measures, my God, over 2 AUs in diameter. Must be something incredible inside there generating it. We're transmitting lingo code friendship messages on all frequencies. No response.
I have a no reading at the center of the cloud.
Definitely something inside there, but all scans are being reflected back.
Some kind of power surge.
Receiving an odd pattern now.
Enterprise, they could be mistaking our scans as a hostile act.
Seem to be reacting to our scans.
Deflectors, emergency flow. We are under attack.
And then they set out, and the warp engines aren't working. The transporter's not working, which is horrible because he has like a science officer. Spock's not in on this yet. Well, first, okay, we do see Spock first. For some reason, Spock is introduced first before Kirk.
And I think that's a wise choice because remember, Spock was the show. So that's your money shot because you've already you've had the opening with nobody that you know in
this
space.
Is what I was thinking that. I was thinking the fans are going to think Spock's not in it unless we get him in there early.
You got to get Spock in there first, yeah.
There are one of my big problems with the movie is especially in the beginning of it, there's way too many lingering shots of all the impressive models and the ships and the space stations.
Yeah, I like that part.
It goes on a little too long. I mean, Scotty takes Kirk over on the little shuttle thingy, and it's like we have this Enterprise cum shot. Okay,
yes.
Basically, we go close up in on Shatner. They kill a couple of people in the transporter, which is absolutely
disturbing. It's very disturbing, and this is a G-rated movie, and it's very disturbing. And the reintroduction of Rand
wearing another variant of the uniform, another kind of jumpsuit
on the show, and it makes me wonder of like, can 10 years really do that to somebody? I guess.
Oh, that's unkind, David.
Well, you know,
she's still a good-looking woman in that movie. But the thing is, okay, you'll notice the uniforms are form-fitting for women.
Yes.
They kind of look like they're draped over the men, like they do on Next Generation in a way in the first season. Well, I mean, and then they're very flattering on the women for some reason.
Oh, and
I think Roddenberry was obsessed with uniforms on women. He's like, I want to see their bodies, but I don't want to see their skin.
This is a very 70s movie in general, just by the way people look. And also, I noticed something that I don't know which version did you watch, because you watched the TV. Now I'm gonna guess
I watched my VHS of the television version, the special longer version. That was the only VHS available for a time. Yeah. And then I watched the theatrical cut because the director's edition is only available on DVD. You can't find it on Blu-ray.
Because
that's what I want. I want to see that because the director's edition looks fantastic. I remember watching. I have it actually. I have the director's version in another form, in another file form. Yeah. Great. It's a fantastic version, and this is something that Lucas should have done instead of trying to improve everything the way he wanted to. He should have just cleaned everything up and completed the visual effects that he wanted to do, and not do things to characters and people and add a bunch of stuff that was
the reason it's not and like anytime it's on cable and it's in HD, it's the original cut too, and it has to do with the fact that for some reason, and this was done like around like 2000 2001, none of it was done in HD. This was like the last. It was all done in like 480, maybe 480p, probably even 480i.
See, that's unfortunate. If they did something to negatives, maybe they could do a nice.
They kind of did like they used to do on the TV show, where they all edited it on video.
So they're going to have to redo everything for Blu-ray then.
Yeah, they'd have to redo everything for Blu-ray, and they're just not going to spend the money. They did that for Next Generation.
But it looks so good. I mean, what they managed to accomplish was fantastic.
What I noticed some things of like the subtitles. They kind of seem to have this weird sort of subtitle continuity issue where, if you remember in the original version, probably the TV version too, the subtitles have this sort of 70s font. It's this sort of curvy kind of like, it's just very 70s looking font.
Yes. And, well, it looks a little like Close Encounters font.
A little, yeah. Well, but then on the director's edition, the font is the Star Trek 2 font in the subtitles anyway. It's the Star Trek 2 font. And I'm like, geez, you had an opportunity to change the font. You could have done it in the Star Trek motion picture font. It's kind of like a special kind of font, but it's like,
well, Wise is an old man. He probably needed
he probably didn't notice. And but yeah,
you have these horrible transporter accidents that kill his Vulcan science officer. He's very much kind of discriminatory because he says, I still like a Vulcan up there. You know what I mean?
Vulcan fetish. I think it has to do with like logic and science of like, I think
he misses his baby. That's what I think.
Yeah, he misses his baby
is Spock.
Girlfriend. He misses his first girlfriend. They all look the same now.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like horrible. It's like malfunction, and like, you know,
Really
it's like
disturbing.
Starfleet. Do you have them? Enterprise. What we got back didn't live long. It's like, you know what I'm reminded of? Conjures up the image of the baboon and the fly.
Yeah, I just
turned
realized
inside out.
It did not live long. It did not live long and prosper.
He tells Decker, I'm afraid you're going to have to double as science officer. And Decker is just fuming at this point. So let's talk a little bit about Stephen Collins. Stephen Collins would go on to star in Seventh Heaven, which was a show that a lot of my friends watched. I was not really into.
Yeah, I remember him from this very short-lived, and this is something we can
he was on some primetime soap opera too.
I'm sure Mr. Chris Cooling over at Forgotten.tv.
Chris Cooling, Forgotten.tv.
He will probably know this. It was called Tattingers, and he ran a hotel and he did things. This was only
it like the 80s or something?
An 80s show, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And
yeah, it's funny about Stephen Collins. He looks goofy. He looks like a Hanna-Barbera cartoon character.
He does. He has sort of interesting sort of bone structure where it's like he's almost too square. He's almost too angular.
Well, a little, and he's also got a goofy look on his face, and you don't buy him having hot sex with Ilea. But he looks okay. You remember the show Ren and Stimpy?
Yes.
He looks like Stimpy. He looks like a male version of Stimpy, the cat. He's got this goofy expression on his face.
Illogical. Please explain. You are human. Only humans can explain their behavior. Please explain.
He doesn't quite pull off the Kirk in training type. He doesn't do the Shatner thing.
Nor should he. I mean, he can't do like Jonathan Frakes, where everybody thought he was kind of like the new Kirk.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's exactly what he was. He was a precursor to Riker, just as Ilea was a precursor to Troy. And Roddenberry, I guess, always wanted to do this kind of a thing. He wanted to have that kind of sexual tension. Unfortunately, on The Next Generation, there really wasn't much in the way of sexual tension.
Now, when she comes in, it's all about like she's Deltan Captain. I'm like,
ooh.
Now, what were the Delta like? Was that some sort of sex planet? Because I'm like,
she has an oath of celibacy.
Yeah,
and
that's all I knew.
That's the first thing she tells Shatner when she comes on. She's like, "My oath of celibacy is on record." He says, "All right."
For like full-on sex machines, or I don't exactly know what I'm not.
What I read. Okay, this is what I know about Deltans. I'm going to school you, young man.
Thank you.
They are an enormously passionate, sensual race, and they make love at the drop of a hat. This is how they communicate with each other. It's all about sex. It's all about being with each other and everything. And she is so her race is considered so passionate they can kill people with their passion, and they have empathic powers. So if they enter into the service like Starfleet or something, they have to do an oath of celibacy, which means they can't have sex. It's basically they have to be like like monks or something. It's like sex is their religion.
She had something going on with Decker because they talk about it.
Yeah. He can't keep it in his pants, as we know. But she's kind of like a little ex-girlfriend, and she's on the ship, and it's obviously there to create sexual tension. But that doesn't really do it, because I think Collins is very much he's a stiff, he's kind of a stiff, and I honestly can't see her attraction to him.
Well, also, I mean, let us mention the late Persis Kambata, no longer with us.
The very beautiful Persis Kambata from Nighthawks, which was a great movie, one of my favorites.
Megaforce, I'm thinking.
She was in Megaforce. She was in something. She was in Warriors of the Lost World.
Ooh, that would have been that would have been near the end of what was her career. But like, from what I remember,
and she died. She died of. She was 50.
Yeah,
she was exactly 50 years old. In 1998, taken to the Marine Hospital in South Bombay, complaining of chest pain. She died of a massive heart attack at the age of 49. We move on, and we're trying to get to the V'ger cloud. Well, it's just a cloud right now, an alien spacecraft inside a cloud. They try to activate their warp engines, and of course, they create a wormhole for some reason in it. The wormhole sequence.
It has to do with the intermix on the warp drive is that they can't quite get the warp drive fixed. They're trying to fix it because, remember, they're still putting the ship together, like it wasn't ready.
Oh, and I forgot, they bring McCoy over. McCoy, the reserve activation clause, Shatner or Captain Kirk commands that McCoy become chief medical officer, which is kind of a diss on Christine, because Christine is like the doctor, and they're going to bring back her old boss, and she's got to deal with that horse shit. So she's got to be, what the fuck? I'm a nurse again? I just spent like 5 years
it's
getting them.
all about Kirk's vanity because he wants to be on the ship. He wants a Vulcan. He really wants Spock, but he can't get Spock, so he wants a Vulcan.
Yeah.
He wants his doctor back. He wants everything back. He wants his glory back.
Ellen,
Yes, sir?
what was the problem down there?
He insisted we go first, sir. Said something about first seeing how it scrambled our molecules.
That's a familiar ring, isn't it? Starfleet, this is Captain Kirk. Beam that officer up now. Well, for a man who swore he'd never return to Starfleet.
Just a moment, Captain, sir. I'll explain what happened. Your revered Admiral Nagura invoked a little-known, seldom-used reserve activation clause. In simpler language, Captain, they drafted me.
They didn't.
This was your idea. This was your idea, wasn't it?
Bones is a thing out there.
Why is any object we don't understand always called a thing?
Headed this way. I need you. Damn it, Bones. I need you. Badly.
Permission to come aboard?
Permission granted, sir.
Well, Jim, I hear Chapel's an MD now. Well, I'm going to need a top nurse. Not a doctor who'll argue every little diagnosis with me. And they probably redesigned the whole sick bay, too. I know engineers, they love to change things.
Well, yeah, I mean, both Kirk and Spock are using this incident to bring themselves back to where they were or something like that. They're sort of manipulating the situation in that way.
Because Spock was doing the Kolinar, but then a consciousness from space was stirring his human blood.
Doesn't this point to the enormous failing of Vulcans? There's another episode very similar to this, actually, in the original series called The Immunity Syndrome, where it talks about how this entire crew of Vulcans dies because they could not understand the irrationality of this organism that was infecting the galaxy, and they had to deal with that. This points to a flaw in Vulcans that's because they can't acknowledge emotions, so they're not sensing it. And the woman who's about to give him his necklace or whatever,
they purge their Vulcan, because like Vulcans are actually very emotional, and that's why they embrace logic. But then they have a process where they can purge themselves of all of their emotions and not integrate them into their psyche.
Yeah, maybe that goes back to our previous discussion about the Galileo 7, about how Spock can't seem to he can't understand the irrational acts of others because he is not irrational. That's a flaw. That's an emotional flaw. You need to be able to do that.
Well, yeah, you need to understand their process to fully understand like where they're coming from, so you can build up a defense mechanism even for it.
And that's sort of what results in kind of, I don't know, after Star Trek 4, although I sensed it in Star Trek 2, 3, and 4 that it was a different Spock.
Well, I mean,
I kind of sensed that he was mature.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can also say like, okay, he gets to 2. He did. I mean, in spoiler, he does die in Star Trek 2.
What? He dies?
Oh, no.
And his father is Chewbacca?
I think that like if you like, and this was the way they kind of got him to come back of like, we'll bring you back if I'll come back if you'll kill me, and I'll die good, and we'll make it part of the story.
This was when he thought he could shed the Spock image and be Leonard Nimoy.
He couldn't, and then he accepted it, and his life became better, I think.
And the thing is, I think in 2 and 4, because he isn't in 3 all that much. He's in 3 at the end. I think it's his new method now is, and going into 5 and 6 also, love me for what I am. If you don't like what I am, fuck off. I don't care. It's not important to me. I'm not going to try and be this person. I'm going to try and be me. It's a stronger.
Able to sort of inform his humanity more into Spock as the character, because remember
he should he because he realizes you don't have to be like everybody else, just be yourself.
And then that even applies to Spock, because he's like, Spock did, I mean, he did make the right to the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few,
or the one. He made the right decision. I mean, if I was standing there and like I'm like, I can fix this, it's going to kill me, but I can save everyone else, I you know, especially if I'm, you know, he's Spock, he's old, he's already probably pretty damn old. He's like, you know what? This is the right decision to make.
and I can't. I probably would. I mean, it's either I die or everyone dies.
Yeah. We move on to the wormhole sequence when they try to engage their warp engines. Like I said, they kept the engineering suits but discarded the other costumes. Shatner himself goes through 3 costume changes in the movie. He
almost has his old, like for a part of the movie, it's kind of that green. It's kind of a green shirt thing. It's very similar to the old shirt.
Are you talking about the tennis shirt that he's wearing? He's wearing like his.
Yeah, it might be that. Yeah.
He's got this short sleeve shirt. He's got the regular uniform that everybody's wearing that leaves nothing to the imagination. And then he's got like something else. He's got another uniform.
Oh, and I got to say, Shatner's hair, probably his worst hair in any of the movies or TV shows. It's obviously a wig. It's not lit well. It doesn't fit right. It's just obvious. However, himself, he's trim. He's in shape. He looks lean and mean. He looks like he prepared. He had time to prepare.
The Shatner wig update.
Yeah,
okay.
It's okay. It's not. I mean, he would, of course, later he would have better wigs, and then the one he has now is excellent because it's more sort of a hair replacement system thing. It's a little obviously wig.
So, I think Kirk is the most annoying character other than Decker because he's got hostility for Decker, and he's kind of like bossing people around, and he's getting used to the idea of being a captain again.
Well, it's also this interesting sort of Shatner transitional period where he has the show Kirk, which is almost a stage performance.
Yeah.
And then you have movie Kirk, which is him actually trying to be an actor, sort of, and a film actor, which
he
is
does
different
well. Yeah,
from stage actor.
Well, Shatner is good in the movie. His best performance, I think, as far as the best performance, it's somewhere between 2 and 3. I think he's wonderful in 2, but he reveals so much more about Kirk as a character in Star Trek 3.
I would agree, and that probably has to do with Leonard Nimoy being the director and Leonard Nimoy basically being his only friend through a lot of this.
Yeah.
And it's like when you're with your buddy and like he was able to, as his friend, be honest with him about his performance and say, I need this. Can you do this? And then by then they know each other for so long, they have kind of a shorthand of like what he needs and what he requires.
So we go to the wormhole sequence. It is silly. It's very because everything is slowed down and weird. Gets this washed out effect, and I don't know, ghosting effect.
And then when they blow up that asteroid with the photon torpedo, because you can't do it with the laser, you can't do it with the phasers because it's channeled into the warp drive or something.
Yeah.
So he has to use photon torpedo.
And Decker knew that, and he was about to get
when they blow it up, it's like this very puny, crappy looking explosion. It just kind of looks like
it is. It just sort of like it looks like it doesn't even look as good as like a TIE fighter explosion, really.
However, on the director's edition, they fix it, and it's a much bigger explosion, and it looks correct.
The concussion shockwave of the Death Star blowing up or something?
It doesn't quite have that, but it does have like this big explosion, and then they have the shot of the ship kind of moving around. It looks a little better.
What always makes me laugh is Chekhov going,
"Targeting asteroid."
Yes, I remember that, yeah.
Oh, and of course, Chekhov does get injured. Remember?
Yeah, and
he screams. He goes, "Ah!" He screams like a girl.
There's 2 different versions of that. There's the I guess the theatrical and TV version, and it may not be, but they just have the nurse come in. Kirk goes, "Medic," and then
excuse me, that's Dr. Chappell you're talking
Dr.
about.
Chappell comes in.
Dr. Chappell.
She does something to him, but in the director's edition, before Dr. Chappell comes over, Ilea does some sort of weird like mind meld thing on him.
She has like an empathic power.
Yeah.
And he feels better or something like that. I don't know. But again, another insult to Christine, who is just trying to do her job, and everybody else is upstaging her.
Yeah.
Writers were invited to submit storylines for this movie. And they all come in. They're all sitting at an enormous table with Paramount Studio executives. And it's Ellison's turn to pitch an idea. And his idea is, okay, this is it. The Enterprise reaches the edge of the universe. And they say to him...
This is like Star Trek V a little bit.
The edge of the universe, where there's nothing, there's non-existence. And the edge of the universe is enclosing in on our universe and threatening to destroy it. And they say, no, Harlan, we want big ideas. And he's like, what?
That's about the biggest idea I can think of.
Yeah, they're like, you don't get it, Harlan. We want a big idea. We don't want this edge of the universe shit.
No, we want the plot 10 years from now. We want the plot of Transformers the movie where there's this big thing headed towards Earth, or we want the plot of Star Trek 4 where this big thing is heading for Earth.
Yeah. So The Changeling was a teleplay written by John Meredith Lucas, who was also a producer on the show in the second season, and it's about the Nomad probe, which was our probe that we launched into space, and it collided with an alien probe and created this intelligence. And Spock even mind melds with it. And in the end, Kirk basically makes Nomad. Nomad comes aboard. It's like a small little probe, and he goes around killing everybody. It's a big red shirt murder movie episode, and Kirk finally just makes it blow up from its own logic. And also, it calls Kirk its creator, because it confuses Kirk's name with the actual name of the creator who created Nomad. So there's a lot of that, and they take this idea and they just go fucking nuts with it on $40 million. This was the idea. I guess Alan Dean Foster is the one who came up with the idea for this, and nobody seemed to know or care that they were ripping off an idea from a TV show.
Well, also remember they were doing this. This was originally an idea for the TV show, part of the pilot of the.
It was going to be the pilot,
show. So
which is the name of our
like,
episode. Our episode is named after that. It's called In Thy Image.
So it was basically like, well, we'll make something good. It doesn't have to be great. It's a TV. I mean, hell, a counter Farpoint isn't that great. So I think it's like, well, it's so then they like. And then when they decide we need to make a movie, wasn't it? What's the exact? Was it Michael Eisner?
Jeffrey Katzenberg.
Jeffrey Katzenberg. He's like we got a movie. We got Star Wars. We got to do Star Wars. I'm gonna help you, and I'm gonna because he was coming from TV or something, and he's like, I can take this and I can use this as my stepping stone to like be a bigwig at Paramount, and I think he did.
Yeah, he wanted a feather in his cap, and I think he got it, but I don't think he got it with that movie though. He got it with the fact that Paramount in the 80s was an unstoppable machine. It was just they were cranking out hit after hit.
You are now listening to Ship to Ship, a Star Trek podcast, with David Lawler and David B. Anderson. Boldly podcasting, where no podcast has... I'm not reading this. I'm not. Where's my coat? I'm getting out of here. I hate it here.
Ship, ship. Hailing frequency zones. Ship, ship.
After the mishap with engineering and the warp drive, Spock comes on board conveniently, Deus Ex Machina, if you will. And,
out of nowhere, it's some sort of. I mean, it does have warp engines on it, and then it just sort of floats in another sort of Jerry Goldsmith slow part, which is still awesome because the music is great.
Again, we're focusing on the models and how wonderful they look, and it is a nice model. It is a very. And nice
I remember there being Star Trek toys. I remember there being toys for this movie, and you could get the Spock probe, you could get the like action figures. They were all sort of Star Wars inspired, I guess.
Spock comes on board, upstages Scotty. It seems like everybody else is better at the other people's jobs.
On Vulcan, I began sensing a consciousness from a source more powerful than I have ever encountered. Thought patterns of exactingly perfect order. I believe they emanate from the intruder. I believe it may hold my answers.
Well, isn't it lucky for you that we just happen to be heading your way? Bones. We need him. I need him.
Then my presence is to our mutual advantage.
Any thought patterns you might sense, whether they appear to affect you personally or not, I expect immediately reported.
Of course, Captain.
And he fixes the warp engines, and then they're on their way. They're on their merry way, and then they make contact with the alien probe. And then we get the really long scenes of traveling through this thing, which are visually stunning. But my God, this is the time. You always like to point out the time when you should go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
When you're in a movie theater, this is the time to go take a leak, and possibly,
like I said, take a number two.
Take a number two, go out, get some popcorn, get some more popcorn, get some more soda, and then come back slowly into the theater and sit down. And you're still,
They're still
like, with the person next to you. You whisper, "Did I miss anything?" And they're like,
"Well, it's
they're
like
still going through the shit."
They go in. They have they basically go in like 3 times. Like they go in, Jerry Goldsmith music, long scary music. Then they get taken, and then something happens like almost like minor, and then they go back in another 5 minutes of Jerry Goldsmith music as they go in. Then they go in again, and then they get to basically get to the space asshole, as I like to call it.
Oh God, yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's like it looks like a sphincter, definitely.
Yeah.
And they made a lot of jokes on the set.
He calls it the V'ger orifice.
And then this crazy light thing comes onto the bridge, starts scanning everything, messes with Spock a little bit, then it comes over, and then it essentially, I guess, kills Ilea.
And isn't there like an extended in the TV vision, like it also gets one of the ensigns in one of those spacesuit, like sort of like they're like, there's like two guys standing there. They look like sort of like bouncers, or they have like these big kind of like reddish kind of spacesuit things on. They're like security or something. And it changes the whole ending where, I mean, we'll get to the ending later, but it basically takes one of those guys too, which they don't even explain. Now it all got kind of,
well, if it does, I mean, even Kirk doesn't even acknowledge that at the end of the movie.
He doesn't. Well, he does in a larger, and I can't remember where I saw it, but it's like when he's listing off, like, list them as missing. He
says two casualties, Decker and Ilea.
Well, that's a voiceover. Like you can see, like he's talking, but like you don't see what he's saying. He starts off like saying 3, and then it's like they cut that whole thing
and
out.
then he's like, wait a minute, I never liked that guy. Just 2.
Maybe. Yeah, I could swear. I thought it was on they were going to explain that on the making, but I could swear I read that. You can probably look that up.
Why can't they have like the mother from Jaws come up to him and say, "What about my boy, Captain Kirk? What about my boy?"
You're going to need a bigger boat.
Not okay!
Yeah, Ilea's gone, and then she just pops up again after some more nonsense in a shower. She's in a shower.
Yeah.
She decides the first thing I'm going to do is take a shower. If I'm an android and I need to know more about humans, I'm just going to go grab a shower.
I'm going to get naked, and hopefully something bad won't happen.
Yeah. So she's like, she's got this weird little pendant lighty thingy on her neck, on the nape of her neck, and she's talking with a filter, and she's like, "You are the Kirk unit. You will listen to me."
You are the Kirk unit. You will listen to me. I've been programmed by V'ger to observe and record normal functions of the carbon-based units infesting USS Enterprise.
Jim, what's going on?
Tricorder. Who is V'ger?
V'ger is that which programmed me.
Is V'ger the name of the captain of the alien vessel?
Jim, this is a mechanism.
A probe, Captain.
So Kirk, Spock, and McCoy come up with the idea of, well, let's have her hang out with Decker. Maybe she can access some of her human emotion or whatever. So Decker starts leading her around, takes her on a tour of the ship, and in the TV version, there's a couple of other things he does. They go to the rec room. They have games. They have crazy games that they have, and they play. All the furniture looks like it came from IKEA. I found that interesting. While Decker is romancing his dead android girlfriend, Spock decides to slip on a spacesuit and go out there, and he knocks out one of the guys, which is hilarious.
A very 70s looking guy with a Hall & Oates mustache.
Yeah,
and he gives a mind meld, and he just goes.
And I believe he was also on an episode of the original series as well. I forget who he played though, but I remember seeing his face in there.
It's a deep cut.
So he goes out, he shoots himself out there. It's one of the few exciting portions of the movie right here is where he hits the thrusters and he goes through the orifice and he starts recording everything that he sees. And he comes to an enormous sculpture of Ilea. And he decides,
doesn't really look like her, but it's close enough.
Yeah. And he decides to mind meld with it, so he puts his hands out there, and we get a really great. It's a great bit. We needed more of this in the movie, really. Yeah. And he just goes fucking apeshit psycho from his mind meld with V'ger.
And you see, like it almost looks like he literally takes in all the information that V'ger ever took in a mind meld.
Yeah, and that's sort of how it happens in the Changeling too, because he mind melds with Nomad. I don't know how that's possible because Nomad's a machine, and he goes apeshit too until Shatner breaks the mind meld. So Shatner decides Captain Kirk dons a spacesuit to see what Spock is up to. He leaves, and that's where we get that shot that you see in the TV version.
Yeah.
The incomplete matte. And I was thinking about this.
It's like, I'll just sort of explain. Like, I watched it on the sort of the deleted scenes and everything on the DVD, and you get to see it in full widescreen. Because on TV they at least would have cut off like the sides. I swear, in the widescreen you literally see half of a set. You see the lights.
Well, you can see. Well, you can see it. You can definitely see it in the TV version too.
Oh, okay,
it's just not as much information on the side, but it's right there. It's
see,
plain
like,
as day.
Lots of lights on the yeah, and it's like, well, and the music is sort of like I think it's even just repurposed Jerry Goldsmith like awe music or something, and it just sort of is like, well, it's completely redundant.
No, it doesn't need to be in there. It was just added there for time, I guess, because they needed to pad it out for TV.
These days, I mean, okay, I think the original cut is still like 2 hours and 10 minutes.
Yeah.
TV cut is like maybe 4 minutes longer or something.
No, it's 7 minutes, I think.
7 minutes long. Okay, they would have just put 7 minutes more of commercials in these days. I mean, hell, you could. They will take a 2 hour movie and fit
yeah.
Three, and then they'll.
Oh my God! You should have seen. We watched we watched the Doctor Who Christmas special. It's 2 hours long, right?
Yeah.
But the show itself is only a little over an hour, and God, they threw in so many commercials.
Like an hour and 5 minutes of actual show.
Yeah, and it's just a little over an hour. I was just thinking that before I got the explanation that they forgot to matte the shot, or that they didn't have time to matte the shot. I was thinking most directors and assistant directors would be fired on the spot if a shot like that made it to final processing. But as it turns out, they forgot to matte the shot. And then there is a nice video. I'll send it to you. There's a nice little YouTube video where this guy took it upon himself to complete the shot.
Oh!
All he did was he took the shot, he put it in Photoshop, he built an Enterprise around the missing areas, and it looks great. It looks wonderful.
Sounds cool.
Yeah, and it's like he said it took about, I don't know, 5 minutes in Photoshop to do it.
Yeah, that's what we can do these days.
So he goes in, he rescues Spock. They take him back to the sick bay, and Spock is just laying there. I don't know what. He grabs Kirk's hand, and he says, "This simple feeling is beyond Beecher's comprehension." Which the slash writers, the slash fiction writers, went nuts over that.
Oh they all think that it's some sort of weird gay thing. Yeah.
Okay, so we move forward. I guess we're on the bridge.
Yeah.
And this is like the final bit, the final third of the movie where Kirk just says, all right, just bring us in as close as we can. They're trying, I guess, where are we at this point in the story? What little story there is? Where are we here?
Okay, we're okay. If that's the case, then remember this whole thing is heading towards Earth. And it's shown much more easily in
is there something about detonating nuclear satellites or something?
Well, yeah, I'm getting to that. Like, so
okay,
what
all right.
is, okay, so they're headed towards Earth, and this is something that they show better in the director's edition, where they say the cloud is dissipating as they're approaching, and then in the director's edition, they actually had the time to make the special effect of there's actually like the V'ger ship. It's like there's a V'ger ship in there in the cloud because as you saw, like at the beginning of the movie, it's like this big cloud, but at the center of it is the V'ger ship, which is massive. It's the thing that they went through.
Beecher signals the creator.
Spock? A simple binary code transmitted by carrier wave signal. Radio.
Radio?
Jim.
V'ger expects an answer.
An answer? I don't know the question.
The creator has not responded.
All planetary defense systems have just gone inoperative.
Sir? Starfleet computes the devices are proceeding toward equidistant positions, orbiting the planet.
They're the same things that hit us.
They are hundreds of times more powerful, Captain. From those positions, they could devastate the entire surface of the planet.
It's approaching Earth, and then the cloud dissipates, and then it starts launching these sort of it's sending a signal to the creator, but it's not responding, and it turns out that they're sending it on radio,
right?
Like sending it on FM signal radio. And then when they figure that out, they have have Starfleet send the signal out or something, because first they had to they have to get on V'ger.
Right.
Figure
okay.
out.
Yeah. That I remember. It looks really good in the original version too, but they made it look even better for the director's edition, where they actually have them. And finally, this is the first time you get the scope of the Enterprise and how big it is, because you got these four tiny little figures walking along the roof of the ship, basically.
Yeah.
To get over there, and then again we have this abstract production design. It becomes more modern as they get closer to it, and then they get into the center of it, and then that's when it's revealed that V'ger is our probe.
Yeah, he said Voyager, Voyager.
Yes.
The Jerry Goldsmith score. Imagine this movie if they had just gone, hey, let's bring back the old Star Trek music. It would have made it terrible. The Jerry Goldsmith score saves this movie. It makes everything dramatic.
We're in there. We're looking at the probe, right?
Yeah.
And they're finally putting two and two together. It took forever for them to come to this conclusion because, Spock should have said, "This is very similar to the Nomad probe, Captain." Shut up, Spock.
We don't reference the old show.
So Kirk decides to. He had already bust out the revelation on the bridge that they were the creators. He says, "V'ger, we are the creators.
We are the creator."
And they're like, "That is not possible."
Yeah, this is not possible.
Darn.
Get you off the balls. Sorry, that's a whole other movie.
They try to transmit the NASA code so that it could get V'ger to release its information or something, and V'ger doesn't want that. V'ger makes the antenna leads.
Wants it to be and this is where I think the sort of the probe and Ilea almost become one person, because she loves him, and I guess he loves her. Although I don't exactly know why they broke up or who left or why.
I don't know. It's interesting. If I were V'ger, I would go for Spock, not for her, because she is emotional, passionate,
much more logical. Yeah, but no, I think it's more. This is more Ilea talking now of she wants to merge with the creator.
Yes, the creator must join with V'ger. So
and you notice the Ilea. I think Ilea comes out and she goes, Kirk unit.
Yeah. So Decker and Ilea physically join. Kirk tries to prevent it.
Yeah.
And he gets smacked upside his head by Ilea.
You're right, and it's like a special effect when they do merge. It's like the special effect that almost blinded both of them because of the light that they had to use when they were standing there and lighting them. It was like this super bright light, right in their face.
It's really insane. What are we looking at here? Are we looking at a sex scene? Is this a sex scene between?
No, we've witnessed a birth.
Voyager 6 disappeared into what they used to call a black hole.
It must have emerged on the far side of the galaxy and fell into the machine planet's gravitational field.
The machine inhabitants found it to be one of their own kind. Primitive, yet kindred. They discovered its simple 20th century programming. Collect all data possible.
Learn all that is learnable. Return that information to its creator.
Precisely, Mr. Decker. The machines interpreted it literally. They built this entire vessel so that Voyager could actually fulfill its programming.
And on its journey back, it amassed so much knowledge, it achieved consciousness itself.
a man and a machine, but it looks like sex to me because they're rotating, they're looking at each other, all this light is emanating off of them, and then
I guess
you know,
sex for non-sexual beings. It's like a merging of. It's almost like like osmosis, sort of remember that their whole thing is based on plasma energy. They kind of talk through the whole thing about like it's a plasma energy kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think it's like a plasma energy, and he joins, and then sort of the information with the creator, and then.
And I think this is why Roddenberry wanted to make the movie. He wanted this scene. That's all he wanted. He didn't care how they got to it. He just wanted this. I want this guy and this alien android chick to have sex in front of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy.
In a G-rated movie.
In a G-rated movie, no less. But G-rated for 1979. I would give this a PG for today.
I think
not a PG-13, but a PG.
I think the director's edition, it does say PG on it. I think it was re-rated because for some reason, like it got re-rated or something, and now it's PG.
So for today's standards, this is weird alien machine sex. So Decker transitions, and now he's known as Z.
Not Q?
Not Q. He's not LGBTQIAPP.
He's Q and LGBTQ, yeah.
They leave because they're going to fucking die if they stay around, because that thing is about to give birth, and these are contractions, and they're getting louder and louder, so they rush back to the ship. They get the fuck out of there very quickly. Yeah. And there's a really nice visual effect that's used where you see all the stream of light pouring out, and then finally we see the Enterprise coming toward us. That's my favorite shot in this movie.
By the way, that shot of them sort of flying over the Earth, like post-explosion, as it's sort of moving towards, it is reused in Star Trek II. Very briefly.
Yes.
Near the end of Star Trek II. Yeah.
Also, the visual effect itself is reused in Star Trek: The Next Generation in an episode called Tin Man.
Oh, I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, look it up and you'll see it's the exact same visual effect.
Yeah, much like the explosion of the bird of prey from I believe Star Trek
6.
Star Trek 6 is used in Generations. It's like
used
the same...
in Generations. Oh, Generations! What a terrible movie. As far as low on the totem pole.
That's something we will not be reviewing, or is that something we will be reviewing?
I don't know. If you want to do it as a lark, we'll do it. But
it does. I mean, we're talking about how it stops at the original crew. It does have the original crew, and it does have Shatner.
It does. I don't know. Let's consider it an Easter egg for the end of the.
I do have that on Laserdisc. It'd be nice to fire that up and.
I have the widescreen VHS.
Yeah, so something we could do.
Kirk, Spock, and McCoy make it back to the bridge in time to see the birth of McCoy's baby there. It's I think Kirk has the line where he says we gave it the ability to have a sense of purpose or something.
Yeah.
And why humans are so awesome and everybody else sucks. They say we can have you back on Vulcan in 4 days. And it was a hotly contested line from what I understand. Nimoy wanted his last line to be, actually, what was it? The original line was supposed to be, I have no business on Vulcan. Nimoy rewrote it because everybody Shatner and Nimoy took turns rewriting the script because the dialogue was stupid, I guess. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure that the best parts of the dialogue that we like are probably stuff that they rewrote. Probably stuff where they're like, well...
Probably, because unfortunately, Roddenberry is a skilled storyteller. He's not the greatest dialogue writer. A lot of his stuff comes off really kind of pretentious. And you can tell in this movie specifically that a lot of it is pretentious. But Nimoy's line, he wanted his line to be, if Dr. McCoy is going to continue to be on the ship, then my presence is essential. Something like that.
Which was not in the movie. He just said,
which was not in the movie, yeah.
Is complete. Although maybe that was cut out because there is sort of like he's standing. It's like he's sort of slightly in one position, and then they cut to like the master shot, and he's in slightly different position.
Yeah,
so it's almost something got cut or something.
Yeah, definitely. Lots of little trims, or as quick as they could work, because apparently they were under the gun to finish this film. Kirk gets the final line when they say heading. He says, "Out there, that away." And
that's the moment where I'm like, if he had been that Kirk for the whole movie. And it had that light, fun attitude, it probably would have been a much better movie.
Yeah,
if it had been like with a wink and fun, like he would later do, because he realized his audience of like people want the Shat. People want full Shat. Sometimes they want medium Shat, sometimes they want low Shat, sometimes they want a lot of Shat, but they always want the Shat. He needed to Shat it up just a little bit.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Just a little. and it would have been, and again, it has to do with the way it was shot. If it had been shot a little brighter, a little more like sparkly, that's my opinion. It probably would have brightened it up a little bit. That'd be what I would not.
Yeah, I would say cut a half an hour, maybe 20 minutes out of the movie completely. Quicken the pace. It takes too long. I think we're an hour in before we get the story. We actually get the story.
It was an attempt to do something big, and in the process, they lost the small moments that we liked, that they would eventually get to in 2 and 3. It's the character moments that we like.
Yeah. Okay. Now this sets up my final. Yeah, it's a great point. This sets up my final piece that I wanted to talk about. There are 4 versions of this movie. Okay, you have the original theatrical cut, which came out, which I watched. The special longer version for television that I watched also in comparison, which I think is my favorite of the 4. And then there's the director's edition with Robert Wise supervising cleanup of new visual effects. A really good version that kind of combines what Weiss wanted to do. His original cut of the movie was only shown on airplanes, and it was cut down for like in-flight viewing and less than 2 hours. I think it ran at an hour and 45 minutes. It had fewer visual effects, a smaller amount of time with the visual effects. Like, for instance, the enormous 5-minute Enterprise cum shot scene that we see, Shatner going absolutely apeshit over his new ship, and everything is cut down to like less than a minute.
Oh, no, but see, I like that.
But it's meant to kind of speed it up, and you're watching it on an airplane. You just want to get to it. You don't want to sit there contemplating your existence while you're on an airplane. Not a good idea. But this fourth cut, which was only shown on airplanes, was something that Robert Weiss did in his spare time after the movie was released. It's basically all character. It's all performances. It's performance driven, and it's very few visual effects shots. And according to David Gerald, who wrote this in the World of Star Trek book that I read and reread, he said that this was the greatest cut of the movie, and only a very small percentage of people saw that version. You would have to have been on a flight from L.A. to Vegas or something like that to see this to see this cut. So what Weiss did for his director's edition was take that cut and apply it as his blueprint for what he considered to be the perfect version of the movie.
So he was trying to get all of his good character moments, but then tack on all those extra long special effects.
But also make the visual effects just look much better. And they did. Yeah. I got to say, for a DVD on a regular tube television or whatever, like what I had when I first purchased it, it was fantastic to look at. It was wonderful, and it wasn't insulting. It wasn't, I feel like they learned a lesson watching Lucas try to deal with fan reaction to his special editions and said, let's not fuck with this. Let's just make it look prettier. Just make it look prettier, and it'll be wonderful. That's what
all he really did was like he seemed to sort of trim some scenes, add some stuff to scenes, like kind of like flesh out scenes, because he just didn't have time to sit down and like look at this is the best version of this scene, sort of get that together, and then look at the special effects. It's like, well, that doesn't look good. That doesn't look good. But it's not like a full changing of, even in Star Wars, of like he would change special effects, and they just like. Some of them were good. Some of the changes in Star Wars were good, but other ones were like, okay, we have a whole Jabba the Hutt sequence. It's kind of redundant.
Yeah, the movie that doesn't suffer the most is Empire, because it's such a great movie. Number one, number two, there are a couple of added visual effects to it, like the Millennium Falcon journeying through Cloud City looks great. It looks fantastic. Yeah. What I don't like are changing the Emperor. I didn't like changing the Emperor to make it Palpatine. I preferred the Emperor being what he was as intended. And then for some reason in one version of the early version of the special edition of Empire Strikes Back, I think he removed it for the Blu-rays that came out, because I don't notice it now. They add a scream when Luke jumps, basically. Remember?
I'll have to look, but yeah, I think you're right. And it's actually
when Luke is falling, they add a scream, and I'm like, why are they adding a scream? He's killing himself.
Now,
he's essentially trying to kill himself.
I'll have to look, because I have the night. Because the Laserdisc is really the only way to get the original theatrical special editions of those, and I have that. And then there's the DVDs, which were slightly different. And then there's, because the Jabba the Hutt is the original theatrical Jabba the Hutt that they used, and then the Jabba the Hutt that they used in the DVD is a slightly improved Jabba the Hutt version.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Every version is different. So I'll have to go
and we'll
back.
see it when we look at the filmumentaries. They're going to show side-by-side comparisons of all three.
Yeah.
In the TV version, which I consider to be the strongest, there's the great bit where Spock is crying.
That's in the director's edition too.
Yeah, he took that and he put that in there because that was his specific thing. He really wanted that. But they cut that out of the theatrical version. He says, "I weep for Vitra as I would for a brother. Logic and knowledge are not enough." I mean, this should have been in the theatrical release. It's a little heavy though.
Nimoy wrote, like when I was watching the thing, is like that's the thing Leonard Nimoy came up with.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's the only one. Again, he is Spock. He knows Spock.
Yes.
Once they started listening to him and saying, "No,
my
this
cat
is what
agrees with you too." She's sounding off over here. So that's the end of the movie. The Enterprise goes into warp and go shake down whatever 2 casualties. Never mind. My boy is dead, Captain Kirk. My boy is dead. And
it ends on the human adventure is just beginning.
Yeah. Which that's sort of the icing on the pretentious cake, I think.
Yeah.
That's right. We're better than everything. Yay, humans. Which is kind of fucked up, considering it's Star Trek.
Oh, you're right. The human. You're right.
So it's like, this could have been it could have been a much better movie than what it was. I understand the time constraints, the need to cash in on the trend of science fiction, big budget science fiction that was happening. But it would lead to better things. And we'll get to that in roughly 5 more episodes of this show. We'll get to Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Mm-hmm. And cock. I shall leave you as you left me, as you left her, marooned forever in the center of a dying planet, buried alive. Okay. Which I saw in the 40th anniversary. I believe it was the 45th anniversary. Sorry.
Yeah.
Released by Fathom Entertainment, and a much better screening situation this time around than Close Encounters. But we'll talk about that when we get to it.
I am tired.
Any final thoughts on motion picture?
Yes. Now, it was so interesting because my history with this movie is, it's almost like it's a part of my life. It's a part of my history. So it's almost not a movie. It's like, okay, I went, saw it originally when I was 8. I probably didn't understand what was going on, didn't care, probably was bored, but I probably was engaged enough. And then I would go on to like ride on my bike and do something, some kid thing. Mm-hmm. Okay. Then it popped up. It's one of the first memories I have of movies on cable, of when I had HBO. We had HBO and it was on. I'm like, oh, Star Trek. And remember, at this time, everything was about, when am I going to be able to watch Star Wars again? That's when that's what this was all about. Like in my childhood, like, when am I going to get Star Wars on VHS, or actually on beta at the time?
Yeah.
And so it's like, I need something science fiction to help me to take the edge off. So anytime Star Trek the Motion Picture would be on cable or eventually on TV, I'm like, I'll watch this. I need space. I need science fiction. So it would be on cable a lot. Then it would be on TV. You'd watch the extended edition with ABC's weird ratty print that they would always use. Then I would watch it. Then it would pop up on like local syndication, and I'd watch that. Then I would get then I got the widescreen Laserdisc. No, wait. Then I would rent it on VHS because I got like a VHS hi-fi stereo machine. So I'm like, oh, I want to crank up the sound, so I'd rent it on that. Then I would get I got the Laserdisc box set where I got all of them. It was the first time I was able to watch it in widescreen again. So I watched that a lot, and I would usually watch almost like as a demonstration. I would watch like the opening, which is kind of awesome, with the Klingons. Mm-hmm. It's all about like sort of the audio visual experience. So I would watch the beginning. I would watch the approaching the Enterprise part. I would watch some of the approaching V'ger, and then I would watch maybe the ending. But I'd watch it like in chunks because you can do like chapters. Okay, I would do that. Then it kind of sat dormant for a while because I had other stuff going on. And then I got that director's edition, and then I watched it again. I'm like, that was pretty good. It did not have quite the impact on me of, say, like when I got that cleaned up version of Superman, where I realized how good the movie was. I didn't come to the realization it was like the best movie ever. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, this is pretty good. And then it sits dormant. And then we get to this, and I watch it again, and I'm like, I'm expecting to like it a little bit more than I ended up liking it, because I was like, this is kind of what people are saying that it is. When I finally was like, looked back, I was like, yeah, this is kind of slow and boring. It's got some good Star Trek moments. I think.
Yes, the motionless picture.
Watching this movie, it made me. Cause it was not the best timing because I watched this movie right after watching the Star Trek Continues thing that we watched.
Yeah.
And that was such a breath of fresh air of Star Trek, of like somehow they found a new angle on just doing old Star Trek. And in watching that, it kind of like,
it was
like,
wonderful. The final episode ties it all in.
Wonderful. That ties into this. Yeah. And so watching this was like, well, that was a movie. That's some interesting parts. It's better to watch it and just listen to the music. Like I'd much rather just like get the Jerry Goldsmith score, and
like isolated, like his isolated score, maybe
isolated score, and then just go have a jog and listen to it and like feel the power of the music, and then I don't need to like watch the movie.
It's a wonderful score, and Jerry Goldsmith is right up there in composer, godlike composers. Him and John Williams, of course, and Elmer Bernstein.
Would you say that this is arguably his best score?
God, he's done so many great scores. It's hard because he probably has. I think he's more versatile than John Williams actually, as a composer. John Williams, you can always tell when John Williams is composing the score. You know, he's dun 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 dun. He's dun 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 dun. He is, dun 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 dun. He is Jerry, Superman. Dun 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 dun. Jerry Goldsmith is he has more of a versatility with the instruments that he uses. He doesn't care if he's not conducting a full orchestra. He'll hit you. He'll smack you in the face with a bass guitar. He'll smack you in the face with an organ. You know what? One of my favorite bits of his music in motion picture is not necessarily the theme. I love his organ bit that he does for V'ger when we see the opening.
Yeah.
Where you go, it's like fantastic. He's done The Omen. He has done Alien. I mean, Planet of the Apes.
I would. This is where I would put it. I would put it, say, and you have to remember, it also has a part of it. I think like Jerry Goldsmith, you can kind of tell what his music is by what's in it and by his period. Like he has sort of his 60s 70s period where it's like Twilight Zone,
Poltergeist. Oh my God.
Poltergeist. It's like you can see, I wouldn't even call it an evolution. He just has like different phases. He'll do like there's a lot of like synth. He'll get into the 80s and he's doing.
You have to hear some of his scores for the original Twilight Zone show. He composed pieces of music for the show, and they are fantastic.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to mention his music is so effective that Hollywood filmmakers today, even today, still use his music as temp tracks for their rough edits.
Yeah.
They like to put his music in there to see how it flows. They don't really do that with John Williams that much because John Williams his stuff is too signature. You know what it is. It's going to distract you.
Yeah.
John Williams is more about music as memory. He wants to give you a couple of notes and then it conjures a memory. That's what he's about. But Goldsmith is much more versatile.
But there's good John Williams. He's not John Williams like he used to be, because John Williams used to literally like layer theme after theme after theme, and I love that. He doesn't do that anymore. He'll throw a theme in there every once in a while, but he doesn't. I always liked his layered themes of like, because then you knew like when a certain person would show up, he does it.
I mean, look at Star Wars. He would layer in Leia's theme as she's walking into a shot.
And he does that in the new Star Wars. I mean, we're not going to have a whole conversation about that movie,
but
it sucked. Like Goldsmith was not a theme layerer. He sometimes he would, but most of the time there was. I mean, he almost like had to remember to put a theme in Star Trek. Like the Star Trek theme is weaved through it, but man, that was all last minute. He was literally like 2 weeks before the movie came out. He's still recording the score.
Yeah.
It's like, this is not the best way to make a movie.
No, definitely
not. What are your final thoughts on the movie?
Boy, it's tough because it's not one of my favorites. It's down at the bottom, actually, as far as that. But it's not a bad movie by any means. They gave Roddenberry too much power. They gave too much power and too much money, and he got. I don't even think this is the movie that Roddenberry necessarily wanted. He wanted something big that had a staggering message to it. And it's a good message. It's a great message. It's just, it takes too long to get there, and we kind of figure it out halfway through. Yes, humanity. Yes, logic and knowledge are not enough. Feelings, feelings. Talking about feelings, motherfucker.
Feelings. Yeah.
It's Spocalypse now. It's all this stuff. It's the message is, it's a good message. The actors look incredibly uncomfortable dealing with these very expensive sets, and they even say they're not even allowed to move around that much, for crying out loud.
They're uncomfortable in the suits, and they're physically uncomfortable.
Yeah, but otherwise, it's a beautiful movie with a beautiful message. It's just too long. It could have been cut down. It could have been rewritten. There were many different possibilities, but they were trying to cash in on science fiction getting hot. Other than a beautiful, beautiful movie. Not Robert Wise's best movie. This man directed The Day the Earth Stood Still, which is one of the greatest science fiction movies ever. Andromeda Strain, great movie too. They wanted a name. They wanted
West Side Story.
He directed West Side Story. They wanted a name to direct this movie. They even asked Spielberg. They asked Lucas. Both of them were very busy at that point. Yeah. They asked Philip Kaufman, I believe, also. Philip Kaufman came very close to actually directing the movie because he was a friend of Leonard Nimoy's, and Nimoy pushed for him for a little while.
See, that might have been that. He probably would have made it interesting, because he would have taken, because he did that with Invasion of the Body Snatchers. He took something sort of a known quantity and made something sort of new and interesting, and yet the same with it.
Yeah. But these are all could have beens, and as it stands, I still consider the special longer version to be the canon version, if you will. Everyone talks about canon now. I'm looking at an argument, a half argument here on whether Star Trek Continues should be considered canon, and I said yes because Gene Roddenberry's kid said it was canon, so it is.
Well, also it fits so neatly into it, like, and that's the sort of thing where it's hard to do a thing that's it's both a tribute and yet it's also entertaining on its own level.
Yeah, I'm showing it to my wife, and my wife is enjoying it, but she's saying, I'm noticing here they're giving Uhura a lot more to do here than they ever did on the show. They're giving all these other crewmen and crew women more to do than just sit around and look pretty,
Well, it's like I said, it's in some ways it's actually better than the original Star Trek. It's a more sort of fully realized version of what Star Trek was trying to be, but was always hampered by either budget or Gene Roddenberry being stupid. Or things like weird stuff would happen. Is like they couldn't fully realize but they never really fully grasped the concept of what they were trying to do. They didn't have the time of Next Generation, which also took like 3 seasons before they finally started to figure out exactly what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
And it basically involved getting rid of Gene Roddenberry had to die for them to actually have the show be good.
Yeah. Just one more note I think my wife made. The only thing that takes her out of Star Trek Continues is some of the acting. She says that, like, of the supporting characters that are in it, she says that the acting, because she's an actress and she can spot this immediately with other performances, and she says that some of the acting is a little too contemporary. It's a little too 2017.
Too contemporary.
It's like because if you look at the acting from the original show, it's very big and dramatic and stagey, and everybody's doing this kind of stuff, and everybody's being very loud and everything. But in this and on this show, the actors are more contemporary.
Yeah, but I think that's what makes it. It's just different enough to make it interesting. It's the acting is of slightly better quality.
Well, yeah, no, it wasn't really a criticism on her part. It was more of an observation. She notices that actors don't act the way they did 40 years ago.
Well, honestly, I mean, it gives certain things that happen, especially near the end, with certain characters.
Oh yeah.
It gives it that emotional impact that it requires that you might not get from the shitty acting in the 60s. Like it gives things.
That final episode was devastating.
I mean, like it's more in line with the films where they're actually acting, and it's more like film acting where it's like a more subtle.
Yeah, you'll notice like even from motion picture on, Shatner isn't really doing that.
No.
He's not. He's not like sometimes he tries to.
It's funny as the movies go, especially when you get into say something like Generations, he's more full Shatner, but he's having fun. And see, anytime he's probably the best part of Generations, isn't he?
Yeah, I like him in Generations a lot, and it was a cheap.
He's having fun with it.
He's
having
kill
fun
him
with it.
twice.
He knows the character. He knows what the fans want out of the character. He can modulate his Shatnerness to what the people are expecting and want, and that's what we want.
Plus, in 4 and 5, he's actually funny.
He is.
You know, I mean, it's just like
he misses his old chair. I miss my old chair.
I love in Star Trek 4 when they're in the antique store, and he's like, "I'll give you $100 for them," and he's just like looking at him like he doesn't understand what he's talking about. He goes, "Is that a lot?"
And then the guy just goes, "Meh."
It's good. Okay, well, let's wrap this up. It's getting really late here. An hour and 57.
This will be edited down to a lean, mean.
This will be edited down to 15 minutes. I will cut. I will do what was not done on that movie and chop it down mercilessly.
Yeah. This will be the director's edition. Yeah.
Because Paramount was like, no, don't cut that. We spent $20 million for that.
Yeah.
Let's get the hell out of here.
This has been Ship to Ship. And I want to thank David for joining me finally on his damn phone, where he sounds pretty damn good, actually.
Yeah, hopefully this will sound good. We had many technical difficulties with my computer, and now it seems to be working fine. Of course,
that's because it knows we're recording, so you know.
Yes.
oh, now I'll work. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll figure it out with a sledgehammer and a can of Diet Dr. Pepper.
and a hamster on a wheel. We'll get that thing going.
All right. Next time we will be discussing the episode in addition to 2 other episodes. This is a 3 for David, so you got to pay attention.
Oh, no.
A Thing About Machines, where we're going to discuss the Return of the Archons, which is a personal favorite of mine because I love it because it's just so damned weird. The Changeling, which Star Trek The Motion Picture rips off, and The Ultimate Computer from season number 2. Until then, live long, peace and long life, David.
Same to you. Bye-bye.
You're not supposed to say same to you.
Oh.
The proper Vulcan response is live long and prosper.
Oh, I thought you were saying live long and prosper.
May the force be with you.
And with you.
And with you, and also with you. Good night.
Good night.
You have been listening to Ship, a Star Trek podcast, with your hosts, David Lawler and David B. Anderson. To find out more about us, subscribe to our YouTube channel or visit us at www.blissville.net or on Facebook at Misadventures in Blissville. Good night.